The first rays of sunlight stretched across the quiet streets of Cedar Ridge, Texas, as Daniel Carter parked his aging blue pickup truck outside Molly's Country Diner. It had become a cherished Saturday tradition. No matter how demanding work became, Daniel always reserved Saturday mornings for breakfast with his 9-year-old son, Noah. After losing his wife, Emily, 3 years earlier to a sudden illness, Daniel had promised himself that his son would never grow up feeling alone. Work could wait, phone calls could be ignored, and meetings could be postponed. But breakfast with Noah was non-negotiable. As they stepped inside the cozy diner, the familiar scent of fresh coffee, sizzling bacon, and warm biscuits welcomed them like old friends. The diner buzzed with the comforting sounds of small-town life. Farmers gathered around one table, discussing the week's weather forecast. Retired veterans laughed over stories they had told dozens of times before. A young waitress named Hannah greeted Daniel with a smile. "Morning, Daniel, the usual?" she asked. Daniel nodded, while Noah excitedly ordered a stack of chocolate chip pancakes. With extra syrup, Hannah laughed, scribbling the order onto her notepad before disappearing into the busy kitchen. The father and son settled into their favorite booth beside the large front window, where Noah could watch passing cars while waiting for breakfast. Daniel looked like an ordinary man. He wore faded blue jeans, worn leather boots, and a gray flannel shirt with rolled-up sleeves. A baseball cap rested on the table beside him. Nothing about his appearance suggested wealth, authority, or importance to everyone in the diner. He seemed like another hard-working father, trying to give his son a normal childhood. Noah happily chatted about his upcoming Little League baseball game, explaining how he had finally learned to hit a curveball. Daniel listened carefully, smiling at every detail. He never glanced at his phone, never interrupted, and never rushed the conversation. Those quiet moments meant more to him than anything money could buy. When breakfast arrived, Noah poured far too much syrup onto his pancakes, making Daniel laugh. "One day you'll discover pancakes taste good without swimming," he joked. Noah grinned and took an enormous bite, leaving syrup around his mouth. Daniel reached across the table with a napkin, gently wiping his son's face while teasing him about looking like a cartoon character. Nearby, customers smiled at the heartwarming scene. It reminded many of them of simpler days, when families gathered without distractions, enjoying each other's company over a shared meal. Outside, however, the peaceful morning was about to change. A sheriff's patrol SUV sped down Main Street, with its emergency lights flashing, but no siren. Sheriff Wade Collins, known throughout the county for his short temper and aggressive approach, had received a hurried radio report claiming a dangerous bank robbery suspect had been spotted near the diner. The description was vague: a man in his early 40s wearing jeans, boots, and a gray shirt, rather than waiting for confirmation or backup. Collins decided to act immediately. His confidence often outweighed his patience, and he believed hesitation made officers look weak. The patrol vehicle screeched to a stop outside the diner, drawing curious glances from people inside. Before anyone could react, Sheriff Collins pushed through the front door, with 2 deputies close behind. The lively conversation stopped instantly. Forks froze halfway to mouths, coffee cups paused in midair, and every eye turned toward the entrance. Collins scanned the room until his gaze landed on Daniel, sitting quietly with Noah. Without asking questions or verifying identities, the sheriff strode directly toward their booth. "You," Collins barked loudly, pointing at Daniel. "Stand up now." The entire diner fell silent. Noah looked nervously at his father, clutching his fork with trembling hands. Daniel slowly placed his coffee cup on the table and calmly asked, "Officer, is there a problem?" "There sure is," Collins replied sharply. "You're coming with us." Confused whispers spread across the sheriff grabbed Daniel's arm before allowing him another word. Noah's eyes widened in fear, and the peaceful breakfast that had begun with laughter suddenly became the center of a shocking confrontation no one inside the diner would ever forget. Sheriff Wade Collins tightened his grip on Daniel Carter's arm, his voice echoing across the silent diner. "Turn around and put your hands behind your back," he ordered. Noah immediately slid out of the booth, his small face turning pale with fear. "Please don't take my dad," the boy pleaded, grabbing the edge of Daniel's shirt. The emotional scene made several customers exchange uneasy glances, but no one dared challenge the sheriff. Collins had built a reputation for reacting harshly to anyone who questioned his authority. Daniel gently rested a hand on Noah's shoulder, speaking in a calm voice despite the growing tension. "It's okay, buddy. Stay right here. Everything will be fine." ignoring the frightened child. Collins pulled a pair of handcuffs from his duty belt. Without asking Daniel for identification or explaining the accusation, he snapped the metal cuffs around his wrists. The sharp clicking sound seemed to freeze time. Inside the diner, Hannah, the waitress, stood motionless with a coffee pot in her hand. An elderly veteran at the counter quietly muttered that the sheriff should at least ask a few questions first. Collins shot the man an icy glare, silencing any further comments. To him, public displays of authority mattered more than careful investigation. Daniel remained surprisingly composed. He neither argued nor resisted. Years of experience had taught him that anger often made difficult situations worse. "Sheriff," he said respectfully, "I think you've mistaken me for someone else. If you'll let me show you my identification, this can be cleared up quickly." "You'll talk when I tell you to talk." Collins interrupted. "The suspect robbed a bank less than an hour ago. The description matches you perfectly." He nodded toward one of his deputies, who immediately began searching Daniel's pockets. Noah watched helplessly as his father's wallet, keys and phone were placed on the table beside half-eaten pancakes. Tears rolled down the boy's cheeks. The breakfast they had been laughing over only minutes earlier now sat untouched, growing cold. While fear filled the room, several customers quietly protested. A local schoolteacher stood and explained that she had known Daniel for years and had never seen him behave violently. Another customer pointed out that Daniel had been sitting peacefully with his son since before sunrise. Collins dismissed every comment. "Witnesses don't run investigations," he replied sharply. "Law enforcement does." His confidence never wavered, even though the evidence against Daniel consisted of nothing more than a vague physical description outside the diner. The sound of powerful engines interrupted the tense silence. 3 black government SUVs rolled into the parking lot. One after another, they carried no local police markings, only discreet federal license plates. Their arrival immediately caught the attention of Collins' deputies, who exchanged confused looks. Within seconds, several men and women dressed in dark business suits stepped out, wearing earpieces and displaying federal credentials clipped beneath their jackets. They moved with quiet discipline instead of panic, scanning the area before walking calmly toward the entrance. The diner's front door opened once again, and the lead federal agent entered with measured confidence. His eyes quickly swept across the room before stopping on Daniel, standing in handcuffs beside the booth. The agent's expression instantly changed from calm professionalism to visible concern. "Who authorized this arrest?" he asked firmly. Sheriff Collins stepped forward without hesitation. "I did. This man matches the robbery suspect we're looking for." The federal agent looked directly at Daniel, then back at the sheriff. "Did you verify his identity before placing him in custody?" Collins folded his arms. "I don't need permission from Washington to do my job." For a brief moment, the room became completely silent. The federal agent slowly reached into his jacket, removed an official identification wallet, and held it where the sheriff could clearly read it. Collins' confident expression began to fade as the realization slowly settled over him. The deputies stared in disbelief while the customers leaned forward, sensing that the situation had taken an unexpected turn. Daniel looked toward Noah and offered the same reassuring smile he had worn throughout the ordeal. His calm never disappeared, even as the truth stood only seconds away from transforming the entire encounter. The sheriff still believed he had arrested an ordinary single father, unaware that one simple mistake was about to become the defining moment of his career.